There was no other response possible to Putin's aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, our second mandate.
I'd rather go chat up Chloe. No one ever talks about how visit people also have
influenza die naar Duitsland gingen. Alleen daar sprak niemand over.
Wat ik nou het aparte vind, die beelden die ik jullie net liet zien, goedemiddag allemaal trouwens, welkom terug. Die beelden die ik liet zien, dat is RT, Russia Today, in Frankrijk, in Nederland, in Berlijn, in Londen, in, hoe heet het ook weer, in Ierland, Dublin. Dus die Russische media, die is en blijft welkom. Is dat goed? Is dat apart? Ik vind het apart. Ik vind het niet goed of fout, ik vind het apart. Dus er zijn allerlei boycottdingen. Maar een soort publiek lopende webcam die... kijk, er is officieel geen oorlog, hè? Tenminste niet met Europa. Wel met Oekraïne natuurlijk, maar verder niet. Het is niet officieel. Maar ik vind het apart. Dat Russia Today, staatsgefinancierde media van Rusland, in allerlei Europese steden de protesten filmt.
Germany stands today with Ukraine. Our thoughts and our sympathies lie with the victims of the Russian war of aggression. And we also support everyone in Russia who are countering the powerful regime of Putin and rejecting its war. And we know you are many in Russia. And I say to all of you, do not give up. I am certain that liberty, tolerance, and human rights will prevail in Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, the third major challenge we have is preventing Putin's war infecting other countries in Europe. And that means, without any ifs, ands, and buts, we are completely committed to the Mutual Defense Clause and our collective security guarantee in NATO. And I assured this to those in Eastern Europe who worry about their own security. President Putin must not underestimate our resoluteness. We will defend the NATO territory on the basis of our collective security guarantee, inch for inch. And we mean this absolutely certainty. In taking a country into Ukraine, the will that we have as an alliance is to defend this country as we would defend ourselves. The German Armed Forces has already expanded its support for the Eastern European NATO partners, and for this important signal, I want to thank the German Ministry of Defense. In Lithuania, where we are leading the response task, we have increased our troops, and in Romania, we have expanded our air policing troop as well. We want to set up a new task force in Slovakia. Our Navy is helping with additional ships when it comes to ensuring and policing the North Sea and the Mediterranean. And we are prepared to be involved with air forces in defending the airspace near the Russian border and above the Eastern European countries. Our soldiers are men and women who have not had much time to prepare for these operations. Let me say, on behalf of all of you here, I'm sure, thank you. Thank you for your important service in these dark days. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the change that Putin's attack means for us, let me say it heralds a new age, and what needs to be done to keep the peace will be done, and Germany will do its bit. Let me say that clearly. But it's not enough just to say it, because for that, the German armed forces need new, strong capabilities. And this is my fourth issue that I wish to speak about now. This is the fourth thing I wish to speak to you about today. If you read the decrees that distort history that Putin has written, if you look at his statement that he made in TV describing his attack, and that, although I had just spoken to Putin for hours, anyone who has read what Putin says can have no doubt that Putin wants to create a Russian empire. He wants to recreate the order within Europe, and he has no fear of using military might to achieve it. And we're seeing this in Ukraine today. So we have to ask ourselves, what capabilities does Putin's Russia have, and what capabilities do we need in order to counter this threat today and in the future? One thing is for sure. We need to invest considerably more in the security of our country in order to defend our liberty and our democracy in this way as well. This is a major challenge for the entire country. It means to have a modern, progressive German armed forces, Bundeswehr, that can protect us. In the Munich Security Conference a week ago, I said we need aircraft, we need ships, and we need soldiers who are well equipped, ideally equipped for their missions. That's what it's about. And this can be done for a country as big as we are, as important as we are in Europe. But let's not kid ourselves. Better equipment, more personnel, all of this costs a lot of money. And for that, we will set up a special fund for the German armed forces, and I'm grateful to German Finance Minister Lindner for his support in this.
The
2022 German budget will have 100 billion euros earmarked for this as a one-off, and this money will be used for investment in the German armed forces. From now on, year for year, more than 2% of our GDP will be invested in defense. And, ladies and gentlemen, and I am addressing all parliamentary groups of the German Bundestag, let us approve this in our basic law. Something I would like to add at this point is we are not just aspiring to this goal because we have committed to this in our allies to increase our defense spending up to 2% of our GDP. We are doing it for ourselves. We are doing it for our own security. Well aware of the fact that it will not be enough just to have the German armed forces to stop the challenges facing us. This is why we also need to invest in development. And this is why we also need to strengthen our resilience technically and socially in order to be more resilient against cyber attacks on our communication systems. And we will need to keep up technologically as well, which is why it's so important for me that the fighter planes and tanks that are being developed need to be developed with our European partners, particularly with France. We need to build them here in Europe. These projects are now top priority for us. Until the new aircraft get off the ground, we will continue to develop the new Eurofighter together. It's also good that the Euro drone contracts were signed this week. The procurement of the armed drones from Israel is something we are working on as well. And for nuclear participation, we will need a modern replacement for the obsolete Tornado jets. The Eurofighter is going to have electronic warfare capacity, and after that, we will consider further options as carriers. And we will need to do more in the future in order to ensure a reliable energy supply for our country in the future. One important measure for this is something the German government has already done, and we will have to reposition to get rid of our dependency on individual energy exporters. The events of recent days and weeks have shown us that a responsible energy policy looking to the future isn't just something that's important for our economy and for our environment, it is also decisive for our security. And this is why the faster we can expand renewable energies, the better it is.
Ik denk dat er eerdaags geen bonus meer is op als Duitsers gas aansluiten.
And we have set the right course as an industrial country. Until 2045, we want to become a zero-carbon industry. And with this aim ahead, there are important decisions that we will have to take. For example, building up a coal and gas reserve. We have decided that the storage long-term options for gas have to be increased to 200 billion cubic meters, and we will have to buy additional natural gas reserves on the market. And we've decided to have 2 LNG reserves and to build them in as soon as we can. The German economics minister Habeck, I want to thank very much for all of his efforts. What was necessary in short term can be connected to what we needed long term anyway to achieve a successful transformation. An LNG terminal where natural gas comes to today can take on green hydrogen tomorrow. And naturally,
ja, Nicky, maar nee, dat zonder bron en link kan ik daar weinig mee. Nou is dit een klein platform nog steeds, 30 mensen op dit moment. Van de 1,9 volgers. Maar als je dat soort dingen zegt, dan snap ik dat je bang bent. De vraag is alleen, kijk, 1 bron is geen bron. En er is momenteel een piek in misinformatie, tot en met. Wat betreft Wit-Rusland, Belarus, die lieten Rusland gewoon even door hun land heen rijden, om via de andere kant weer Oekraïne binnen te rijden. Dat zijn best wel vriendjes hoor, Rusland en Belarus. De USSR, dat waren 3 grootstaten die samen een federatie vormden. Nou, toen dat in weet ik veel, eind 20e eeuw, dus 1980 en verder of zoiets. Toen die uit elkaar gingen, de media hier zeggen graag uit elkaar viel, maar dat is niet zo. Er zijn allerlei akkoorden en zo. Nou ja, lang verhaal kort. Die Oekraïners die wel bij Rusland willen, want die zijn er, die zitten met name in het oosten. Dat is net zo met Belarus. Die praten ook gewoon Russisch. En er waren ook Russische agenten toen met de protesten om Belarus te helpen bij protesten. Dus wat ik nu net lees, dat zou een donderslag bij heldere hemel zijn als die in de geschiedenis ineens anti-Rusland zijn. Dat zijn namelijk best vrienden. Dus ik denk dat je bron, bijvoorbeeld 9 News, dat is ook zijn headsite, vind ik dan, is mijn mening. Dat je bron niet zo best is. Dat die houden van lekker de boel opjutten. Ja, en als je je op laat jutten, dan word je bang.
Are things we need to look at. Putin's war has hiked up these prices, and that's why this week we've put together a package to ease this burden. We have we've got a heating support for low earners and for pensioners, and we will be looking at how to ease this burden.
Jacob D., welcome back. We are listening to the German politicians. They just told us that the yearly spending on the military will be, if I remember correctly, 2.1% of the whole the household book of Germany. So big spendage, not as big as America, for instance, or Russia, but a big spendage nonetheless. Yeah, that's about it for now. What they are saying. Oh yeah, and also they're going to fully electric, solar, wind, perhaps nuclear energy, because they do not want to be relying on oil or gas imports.
what we can get out of Brussels for our own country, but to ask what is the best decision for the European Union. Europe is our foundation, and only if we understand that will we be able to tackle the challenges facing us. And this brings me to my final point, the fifth one. Putin's war means a break for our foreign policy as well. As much diplomacy as possible without being naive, this aspiration remains. Not being naive, however, also means not speaking just for the sake of doing it. For a true dialogue, there needs to be a willingness on both sides. And there is no willingness on Putin's side. And it's not just been the last few weeks and days that this has been the case. And what does this mean for the future? We will not refuse to speak to Russia, not even in this extreme situation. It remains the job of politicians to keep diplomatic channels open. Anything else would be irresponsible. Ladies and gentlemen, we know what we support based on our own history, what we want. We want peace in Europe. We will never accept violence as a means of policy making. We will always push for a peaceful solution of conflicts, and we will work until there is peace in Europe once again. And we are not alone in this. We are working with our friends and partners in Europe and across the globe. Our greatest strength are our alliances. We owe it to them that for over 30 years we have been a unified Germany living in prosperity and peace with our neighbors.
Yes, of course, Missy Artistic. All the world leaders are talking about peace, and they want peace, and they do not want war, and it's all for the people they are chosen for to lead them, so to speak. So yeah, they're great people. This is why they have armies that are not only there for self-defense, but also for attacking people.
If we want these last 30 years not to be a historic exception, we must do everything we can to work towards cohesion within the EU, the strength of NATO, and closer contacts to those who share our values worldwide. I am optimistic that we will succeed, because rarely were we so resolute with our partners as we are today.
Also, for the English-speaking people who did not get this news, up till now Germany only sent 500 helmets. And what was the other thing? I don't remember, but they have sent a ridiculous small amount of help to Ukraine. And the Ukrainians made the joke, perhaps the next shipment will be 500 pillows, something like that. But today, Sunday nonetheless, they are talking about, oh hold on, oh man, I clicked the wrong one. This is December 7th, 2021. Okay, so December 21, 7, 20, different follow order. We say day, month, year. English is most of the time year, month, date. So December 7th, 2021, they said the spendings for the military would be, I think, 2.1% of the entire household book of Germany. And that being said, yesterday it became clear that they have sent a ridiculously small help package to Ukraine. So it's a happy mistake, so to speak. it sheds a different light on things being said 1 year or a year later in different circumstances.
We wouldn't have been able to imagine Olaf Scholz making this speech. That's how fast these changes are
Yeah,
happening.
it's so weird.
And he
They
made it
say
very
it's
clear that
live,
he
but
knows people need
can I show it to
time
you?
to
Yeah, I can
grasp
show it to you.
what all this is about. And that, I think, is why we heard
I will take the
what for
same
him amounts to quite a
screen
bit
cap
of
so it will
pathos
overlap.
in that speech. And by the way, the opposition leader, we didn't hear his speech, but at the end, he essentially called for leadership from the government and said to Olaf Scholz, this is what I
I have
call
to do it
upon you to
again. I
do,
didn't
to
took the
lead us
OK
as we
click.
move into this new era. And that obviously was Scholz's
It's
aim.
weird.
And I think even, you know, a month
It's
and
in
a half ago,
screen. Yeah,
many of us were
in screener.
asking, where is
It
Olaf
says
Scholz in
it's
all of
being
this? He had been
streamed
saying very
since.
little as the
Since
buildup
means
began
since.
of the Russian
Almost
troops
same
on the
word.
border in
December
early to
7,
mid-January.
2021.
Where is he? German
So
media
it might
asked
be
him, is
live
he
at all.
asleep at the wheel? He
Might be
certainly
live
looks like
indeed.
he has now taken on that leadership role.
Indeed.
But that would
You know,
mean
you
that
made a reference to the
for
incredulity of this
no,
particular
not over a
situation,
year.
war in Europe.
For over
People
2
in
months, it
their
has not been
breakfast nook
down,
saying,
the
I
stream.
cannot believe this, as they look at the
It's
television.
possible.
But this is clearly an extraordinary circumstance, and it goes a long way to explain why Germany felt the need to have a policy shift here. But you've covered German politics for a very long time. To what extent can this move be explained by the personalities in power today? This particular chancellor, this particular government?
Very interesting question. I have really been asking myself, and I know I'm not alone with this, what would Chancellor Merkel have done? Would she have responded in the same way? Would she, on all of these different fronts, defense spending, weapons exports, harsh sanctions, would she have moved so boldly under these circumstances? I can't entirely answer that question, but my feeling is this is very much a product of this new government in place, a social democratic chancellor who is now perhaps also recalling some of the SPD's other history, not only the history of Ostpolitik, of the attempt to reach out to Eastern Bloc countries with dialogue and diplomacy, but also the part of history that had an SPD chancellor, Helmut Schmidt, stationing Pershing missiles on German territory
Indeed,
to
yeah.
deter Russia. And I think that is perhaps part of what we're seeing from Olaf Scholz, but it's also very much an impulse of his coalition partners, the Green Party, who have made it clear, even during the election campaign, we are going to push back much harder on Russia, on China. We want to see human rights really count in German foreign policy. And I think they have made and the energy policy shift very much determined by the man who is now leading the economics and energy ministry. So I think this chemistry of this coalition is part of why we're seeing this departure.
Certainly, the German chancellor had people whispering in his ear, but he's a chancellor who was willing to listen, is what it sounds like. We spoke earlier about Scholz's stressing that this is Putin's war. It's not a war of the Russian people. He vowed that Germany would not reopen divisions with the Russian people. But those harsh economic sanctions, particularly the banning of the SWIFT payment system, is going to hurt everyday Russians. Isn't that going to be some pain that the German chancellor doesn't want to inflict on ordinary people?
Well, in fact, that's one of the reasons that Germany held back on the SWIFT issue. The foreign minister was extremely concerned, apparently, about what she called collateral damage, not only here in Germany for the companies that are at the other end of transactions with Russia, but also for Russians. She said, our payments to civil society groups in Russia, those have to also go through a transfer system. The SWIFT exclusion is going to be targeted to particular Russian banks. We don't yet know which. Depending which ones it is, the pain will be greater or perhaps less for Russian citizens themselves. But there's no way that if the sanctions bite, that they don't feel some pain, and undoubtedly the chancellor is aware of that. He referred to damage on the stock market in Russia, but it will go beyond that.
That is our chief political correspondent, Melinda Crane. That's all for now. We'll be back at the top of the hour with more news about Ukraine. I'm Michael Loku in Berlin. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, hold on. I need to reset on my screen layout. Okay. So Jacob, of course you are way more informed about Canada than I am, but it sounds right because in Germany there are a few casernes. What's the English word for, the places where military live, so to speak. Those entirely military little villages or little cities. And
Ci troviamo a Carrara.
We are in
Conosciuta nei
Carrara,
secoli per l'estrazione
the
del
city
marmo.
long renowned for its marble,
Marmo che è uno dei migliori nel
used by
mondo,
the likes of
quindi
Michelangelo
è servito
and
a
by many.
Michelangelo.
Major Russian attack on the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv underway. Alex Marquardt is on the scene for us in Kyiv right now. Looks like those skies are still showing the result of that attack, whatever it was, but it's pretty illuminating right now.
Wolf, it is extraordinary. I mean, this attack happened just about half an hour ago when we heard this loud strike on that area of southwest Kyiv. And for the past half hour, you have seen that glow in the sky, really bright red, just sort of reflecting off of that cloud right above it. It is clearly a fire of some sort. We're still trying to figure out what exactly that target may have been. It is over near to an airport, and we know that the Russians have been targeting military installations, military targets. They claim that that is all they're targeting.